Princess Anne had prepared herself for old memories, private letters, and painful reminders of the father she had lost. She had not prepared for a final instruction concerning her own daughter. Inside a sealed archival envelope, Prince Philip had left a request that placed Zara's future at the center of an unfinished royal duty. When the archivist read the final paragraph aloud, Anne's expression changed, and the silence that followed revealed how deeply the words had struck her. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The summons brought Anne to a restricted reading room at Windsor Castle, a secure chamber for sensitive documents. Senior archivists had finished classifying Philip's final correspondence, meaning they had sorted and protected what he left behind. She expected notes about medals or possessions. Instead, the lead archivist unfolded a sealed page and read the request that changed everything. Philip wanted Zara Tyndall offered leadership of a new Royal Equestrian Foundation, built from his sporting legacy. The foundation, an independent organization protecting riding, carriage driving, and stable welfare, would carry his values forward. Yet he had added one condition: Anne must personally decide whether she would support her daughter taking the role. Anne gripped the table when Zara's name was spoken again. Her father had described his granddaughter as capable of guarding his principles without being swallowed by palace rank. Pride rose first. Then grief struck harder. Philip had trusted Zara, but he had also burdened Anne, forcing the mother to judge whether royal duty would strengthen her daughter or take too much from her. "Why was this kept from me?" Anne asked. The archivist answered through a documented briefing, explaining that Philip had ordered the envelope sealed until the foundation's legal structure was complete. He wanted no courtier, trustee, or advisor to weaken Zara's authority before she was given the choice. Then came the handwritten line: Zara must remain free to refuse. The crown could invite her, but it could never pressure her. Anne read those words twice, knowing royal expectation could become a command without anyone speaking aloud. She asked for the room to be cleared. Before the archivists reached the door, Anne demanded to know who else had seen the request. The answer stopped her cold. Charles and William had been briefed, and disagreement had begun. Anne had entered Windsor expecting to confront the memory of her father, but she left the reading table knowing she would first have to confront the living. And at the center of that gathering stood Zara, unaware that her future had already been written in Philip's hand. Zara had spent her life close enough to the monarchy to understand its pressure, yet far enough away to preserve something rare: personal freedom. Philip's request threatened to change that balance forever. To Anne, the foundation represented her father's trust and a duty that could not be ignored. To Zara, it risked opening a door she had deliberately kept closed. Neither woman was prepared for how quickly love, loyalty, and fear would collide. Anne carried the weight of Windsor back to Gatcombe Park, where she and Zara had built lives around horses rather than ceremony. She found her daughter beside the stable entrance, pulling off riding gloves. Zara looked up, saw the strain in her mother's face, and stopped before Anne could speak. "You've heard something," Zara said. Anne tried to answer calmly. She explained that archivists had opened Philip's sealed instruction concerning a new equestrian foundation. The organization would protect riding programs, carriage driving, stable welfare, and values he had defended for decades. Then she spoke the name that mattered. "He chose you." Zara did not smile. She lowered the gloves onto a bench and asked why her grandfather had never told her. Anne reminded her of the bond they shared, the discipline, humor, and refusal to accept an easy victory. Philip admired how Zara competed without demanding royal privilege. He believed she could defend his sporting legacy because she understood effort, failure, and responsibility beyond palace walls. But Zara heard something darker beneath the praise. She was Anne's daughter, an Olympic equestrian, a wife, and a mother who had created a life without a title or permanent palace position. Accepting Philip's request could pull her toward the system she had kept at a distance. "Did he want me to be happy?" she asked. "Or did he think duty mattered more?" Anne felt the question land. She still did not reveal that Philip had given her power to endorse the appointment. Supporting Zara might look like faith, but it could become pressure disguised as love. Then Zara broke her silence. During a private recorded conversation years earlier, Philip had asked whether she would protect the family's equestrian legacy if the institution ever forgot what the horses had taught it. She had promised she would. Anne had never known. Zara's expression tightened. Do Charles and William already know? Anne hesitated, then admitted that both the king and the prince had been briefed before Zara was consulted, without warning her first. What had begun as a private exchange between mother and daughter was no longer theirs alone, because Philip's final request had already passed through royal hands, and one earlier incident explained why he had taken such extraordinary precautions. The sealed request had not emerged from a passing thought or a grandfather's sentimental affection. It had begun with one specific moment that Philip never forgot. Years earlier, during a private equestrian ceremony at Windsor, Zara had challenged a decision that senior courtiers expected everyone else to accept. The room had fallen silent. Anne had feared her daughter had gone too far. Philip, however, had watched Zara refuse to bend, and made a decision that would outlive him. The memory returned with brutal clarity. Philip, Anne, and Zara had joined senior sporting officials and palace administrators at a private Windsor Equestrian Awards ceremony. Those administrators managed royal equestrian patronages, the formal links through which members of the family supported riding organizations and events. The meeting was meant to approve a long-term program for elite competitions. Beneath its polished language, however, the plan redirected money away from injured riders, stable workers, and small regional training centers. Zara read the figures twice. Then she placed the program booklet on the table and refused to endorse it. A royal sporting legacy meant nothing, she said, if it protected prestige while abandoning the people who fed the horses, treated their injuries, and kept the stables alive. The officials stiffened. Philip said nothing. Anne felt fear rise immediately. After the meeting, Anne pulled her daughter aside. She warned Zara that challenging senior courtiers in front of her grandfather could damage relationships that had taken years to build. Zara listened, but she did not retreat. She told her mother that silence would have made her part of the betrayal. Philip followed moments later. He closed the corridor door and asked Zara one question. Would she repeat those words if her name disappeared from every royal invitation? Zara answered yes, without hesitation. The Duke studied her, then gave a brief nod. That exchange was preserved in a documented account written by his private secretary later that evening. Philip began drafting the first version of the foundation request before midnight. He no longer saw Zara merely as a gifted rider or beloved granddaughter. He saw someone independent enough to resist palace interference when loyalty became obedience. Then Anne uncovered the final warning. One administrator present at that ceremony later tried to remove Zara from the succession plan for Philip's sporting work. Worse, that same advisor now sat close to the committee controlling the proposed foundation. The old conflict had never truly disappeared completely. Philip's request had been designed not merely to honor Zara, but to defeat the very resistance he had witnessed at Windsor, and Anne now understood that accepting his wish would require a confrontation with the people who had tried to bury it. Princess Anne did not raise her voice when she entered the committee chamber. She did not need to. The sealed request lay beneath her hand, and across the table sat the advisor who had spent years steering Philip's legacy away from Zara. He expected negotiation. Anne offered none. What followed was not simply a dispute over a foundation. It was a daughter defending her father's final judgment, and a mother demanding to know why her child had been quietly rejected. Anne faced the foundation trustees, palace lawyers, and Sir Malcolm Haversham, the senior advisor, who had resisted Zara since the Windsor ceremony. The trustees controlled the foundation's governing decisions, while the legal representatives protected its authority and money. For years, those people had treated access to royal approval as a weapon, and Anne understood danger immediately. Haversham spoke first. He argued that the organization needed a titled working royal whose schedule, appearances, and public choices could be managed through the royal household. Anne listened without interruption. Then she slid Philip's handwritten request across the table. "Show me the sentence," she said, "that gives you the right to replace the person he chose." Haversham did not touch the page. He claimed Zara's independence made her unpredictable and difficult to control. That answer broke Anne's restraint. She told him independence was not the weakness her father overlooked. It was the reason he trusted Zara. Philip had chosen someone who could protect the work when palace convenience threatened its purpose. Havisham shifted the attack. He suggested Anne's judgment had been clouded by maternal loyalty. She removed her glasses and placed them beside the document. "My fear is not that Zara will fail," Anne replied. "My fear is that this role will consume a life she never offered to the crown." The room changed. Anne was not forcing her daughter forward. She was defending Zara's right to choose. A palace lawyer then opened a secondary attachment and read from a documented legal condition. Philip had ordered that if Zara were denied the offer before deciding personally, control of the private endowment, the protected fund financing the foundation, would pass away from the committee entirely. The trustees fell silent. Their authority, their influence, and their access to the money were suddenly at risk. Havisham recovered first. He warned that Charles still had to approve the foundation's use of royal status, the official recognition, connecting it to the monarchy. The real fight, he said, had only moved upstairs. Anne had defeated the first attempt to silence Philip's request, but the document could not become reality without the sovereign's recognition, and Charles was about to face a choice between palace control and his father's final command. King Charles sat alone with his father's request open before him, reading the same paragraph twice before placing the pages flat against the desk. As sovereign, he could recognize the foundation, limit it, or keep it permanently outside the official royal structure. Yet Philip had understood power too well to leave his wish undefended. Hidden inside the legal framework was a condition that transformed a family appeal into a constitutional dilemma, and forced Charles to choose what kind of son he would be. Charles reviewed every clause, aware that recognition would give Zara a major public role without making her a working royal. A working royal is a family member who carries out official duties on behalf of the crown. That difference mattered. Zara would gain authority, yet remain beyond the household's control. William entered because the foundation touched patronage, long-term funding, and sporting responsibilities that may pass into his reign. The prince understood that whatever Charles decided would not end with this generation. It would become a model others might invoke. Charles read Philip's description of Zara again. Unmanaged, unafraid, and therefore trustworthy. His hand tightened around the pen. Then grief overtook procedure, and he set it down without speaking. Now the king was not weighing precedent. He was hearing his father. But fear returned. Charles warned that allowing an untitled relative to direct a royal institution without palace supervision could weaken the structure holding the monarchy together. Royal patronage, the official support given by a royal figure to an organization, depended on trust, discipline, and clear lines of authority. William challenged him. Rejecting Zara because she could not be controlled, he said, would prove Philip's warning correct. Charles bristled, but his son pressed on. The Duke had spent a lifetime defending service over appearance, and Zara had earned his confidence by refusing to protect prestige at the expense of people. Then the legal attachment changed the argument. Philip had placed a private endowment beyond palace reach. An endowment is a protected fund designed to finance an organization over time. The money could sustain the foundation independently, but only if Zara received the first formal offer, and Anne certified that her decision had been made freely. Charles understood the trap. He could refuse recognition, but he could not erase Philip's design. Finally, he agreed Zara must be asked. Yet he imposed one condition. She would hear the burden before answering. And Anne would not speak for her. The crown would no longer block Philip's request, but it would not soften its consequences either. And when Zara entered the room to hear the terms, the future she had protected so carefully began to feel suddenly fragile. Zara expected responsibility. She did not expect surrender. The foundation would demand months of preparation, international travel, public scrutiny, and a permanent association with royal decision-making. Every promise Philip had written carried a cost he would never have to watch her pay. As the conditions were read aloud, Zara glanced toward Anne for reassurance. Her mother remained silent, because Charles had ordered that the choice must belong to Zara alone. Charles began the briefing without ceremony. William sat beside him, while Anne remained close enough to hear every breath her daughter took. A legal advisor explained that no announcement had been prepared and no acceptance was expected. The meeting existed for one reason. Zara had to understand the entire burden before making a free choice. The role reached far beyond ceremonial appearances. Zara would oversee youth riding programs, support for injured competitors, stable welfare standards, international partnerships, and the preservation of Philip's carriage driving legacy. Carriage driving was the competitive equestrian discipline he had championed for decades, turning personal passion into public service. Each responsibility sounded honorable. Together, they threatened to consume the private life Zara had fought to protect. Zara removed her wedding ring and turned it slowly between her fingers. "How many weekends?" she asked. The advisor hesitated before answering. Nearly half the year could involve travel, meetings, inspections, or events. Mike and the children were not mentioned in the schedule, yet they filled the silence that followed. Anne wanted to interrupt. Every instinct told her to challenge the demands, cut the travel, and defend her daughter before the role swallowed her. But she stayed still. Speaking too quickly might turn protection into pressure, and Philip had forbidden that. Zara looked directly at Charles. "Why didn't he ask me himself?" The king answered through the documented account left by his father's private secretary. Philip feared she would say yes immediately out of love, before asking what the promise might take from her. He wanted Zara to choose after grief had loosened its grip. Then came the warning. Acceptance would revive arguments over royal privilege, commercial sponsorships, and why an untitled family member should hold influence over a royal foundation. Zara would face suspicion from both critics and courtiers. She asked for 48 hours. Then she left without embracing Anne. Later, the Princess Royal returned to the table and found Philip's request gone. A secretary confirmed Zara had taken it with her, determined to read the pages alone. For the first time, Zara was not hearing Philip's wish through lawyers, monarchs, or family expectations. She was hearing his voice through the words themselves. And what she found inside the final pages changed the meaning of the request entirely. Late that evening, Anne found Zara inside the empty tack room at Gatcombe Park, seated beneath a single lamp with Philip's request folded across her knees. There were no advisors, no royal secretaries, and no sovereign waiting for an answer. Only a mother and daughter, confronting the wishes of the man they had both loved. Zara had reached the final page. Anne saw tears on her face, and realized that Philip had written something the archivists had not read aloud. Zara looked down at the paper before speaking. The final page was not part of the legal framework or the administrative plan. It was a private note addressed only to her, written in Philip's own hand, and sealed behind the formal instructions. "He didn't choose me because I was royal," Zara said. "He chose me because he believed I could say no." Anne sat beside her. For the first time since Windsor, she allowed herself to stop being the Princess Royal and simply be a mother. Zara asked whether accepting the role would betray the part of Philip that had always protected her freedom. Anne admitted the same fear had followed her from the archive room to the stable yard. Her devastation had never come from doubt. She trusted Zara's strength. What broke her was the duty Philip had left behind. She had to encourage her daughter without turning his memory into a command. Love could guide. It could also become pressure, especially when the voice behind it belonged to someone they could no longer question. Zara unfolded the note again. Philip had written that she should accept only if the foundation could be shaped around her family, never the other way around. The organization was meant to protect service, not demand sacrifice for appearance. That sentence changed everything. Zara's answer came quietly, but it carried steel. She would accept under revised terms. Ceremonial duties would be limited, welfare funding would be published openly, independent trustees would guard the foundation from palace control. Most importantly, her children's private lives would remain beyond royal negotiation. Anne did not argue. She pulled her daughter into an embrace and promised to support every condition. Relief came first, then another fear. By morning, the decision would be public. Courtiers might call Zara difficult. Commentators might call her boundaries defiance. But neither woman was willing to confuse obedience with service again. This time, however, They would face that judgment together. In the quiet of Gatcombe, Zara had finally answered her grandfather. But beyond those walls, the palace prepared an announcement that would turn a deeply private family promise into a national argument about duty, privilege, and the future of royal service. By sunrise, the secret was no longer contained inside Windsor's archives. Zara's appointment moved across television screens, newspaper presses, and palace gates with startling force. Some saw Philip's choice as a powerful vote of confidence in a granddaughter who had earned respect without a title. Others called it royal influence disguised as independence. But one photograph outside Buckingham Palace captured the public mood more clearly than any headline, and left Anne visibly overwhelmed. Buckingham Palace confirmed that Zara had accepted leadership of the Prince Philip Equestrian Foundation under an independent structure approved by Charles and certified by Anne. The announcement stressed that she would not become a working royal, receive a title, or use the sovereign grant, the public funding that supports official royal duties. The distinction mattered, but it did not quiet the argument. Supporters praised a granddaughter who had earned trust through discipline rather than rank. Critics claimed the palace had created authority without accountability. Zara's limits, meant to protect her family and the foundation's independence, were recast as privilege by some and courage by others. The fictional Morning Chronicle captured the storm with one striking front page. Beneath an old photograph of Zara riding beside Philip during a carriage event, the headline declared, "His final choice, Zara accepts Philip's unfinished mission." The image carried warmth, the words carried pressure. Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd gathered near the railings. Among the flowers and handwritten notes, a young rider placed a worn competition rosette beside a card. "For every stable Philip remembered, and Zara promises not to forget." That small tribute spread across broadcasts within minutes, turning a palace announcement into something deeply human. Anne watched the footage at Gatcombe. When the camera lingered on the rosette, she covered her mouth with one hand and asked for the television to be switched off. She did not want the staff to see her lose control. Pride had arrived, but grief came with it. Then the old resistance collapsed. Haversham resigned publicly from the committee after independent trustees accepted every condition Zara had demanded. His departure confirmed that the system built around palace control had been broken, not negotiated with. By afternoon, the family prepared to gather at Windsor for the private signing ceremony. Zara would place her name beneath Philip's. Charles would recognize the new structure, and Anne would have to release the guilt she had carried since the archive door first closed behind her. Nothing about the moment felt simple. The public had delivered its judgment in headlines and tributes, but the only verdict that truly mattered awaited inside Windsor, where Zara, Anne, and Charles gathered around the document that had changed all three of them. The final ceremony contained no grand procession, no balcony appearance, and no glittering display of royal power. Zara stood at a small Windsor table, with Anne on one side and Charles on the other. Before her lay Philip's original request and the revised foundation charter she had shaped for herself. The moment was not about obeying a dead man's command. It was about deciding whether love could become duty without becoming a prison. And Zara had finally found her answer. Zara read the charter one final time before signing. Every safeguard she demanded was there. Independent control, open welfare accounts, limited ceremonial duties, and protection for Mike and their children. The foundation charter, the legal document defining how the organization would operate, no longer demanded that she surrender her life for service. Charles signed next. His recognition order, the formal approval connecting the foundation to the crown, confirmed that Philip's name would remain attached while daily management stayed beyond palace control. The king paused before adding his signature. He had feared loss of authority and change without permission. Yet resistance had become harder to defend than trust. Zara placed Philip's old carriage-driving whistle beside the pages. Anne touched it briefly and closed her eyes. For years, she had guarded her father's memory through duty. Now she moved her hand away, releasing the belief that protecting his legacy meant controlling what happened next. "I am proud of you," Anne said, "not because you accepted, but because you refused to accept on anyone's terms except your own." Zara answered quietly, Her grandfather had never asked her to become more royal. He had asked her to protect riders, stable workers, forgotten training centers, and tradition's powerful institutions, too easily pushed aside. The foundation launched with Zara as chair and Anne as honorary patron, a symbolic supporter without executive authority. Independent welfare representatives joined the board, while guaranteed programs supported young riders, injured competitors, and stable workers. Philip's final request had not pulled Zara deeper into royal control. It forced the monarchy to admit that service could exist without titles, obedience, or surrender. Anne's devastation became understanding. Zara's hesitation became purpose. Charles's caution became acceptance. The victory felt quiet, but its meaning reached far beyond that Windsor table. There was nowhere else for the story to go. Philip's wish had been honored, Zara's freedom had been protected, and Anne finally understood that her father's final gift was not a burden placed upon their family, but permission for the next generation to serve the crown without losing themselves. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.